He stood there again today. Same time, same place, like he had for the past 413 days. I had almost convinced myself I wouldn't look, wouldn't turn my head. But as I crossed the intersection near the old bus stop, our bus stop, my eyes betrayed me. And there he was, Liam, leaning against the rusted street pole, hands buried in the pockets of his faded green jacket, the one I bought him for our second anniversary. I froze. For a second, the world dulled. The city noise, the honks, the footsteps, all blurred into background static. He hadn't changed much. Still tall, still calm in that quiet, painful way that used to drive me mad and melt my heart at the same time. He looked up, almost sensing me, but didn't see me. Or maybe he did and chose not to react. I ducked behind a passing bus and kept walking. It had been over a year since I left. Quietly, without a word, just like he feared I would. Without explanation. No note, no goodbye, and no sign that I'd ever return. Just one broken promise left behind. I'll come back. I promise. No matter what happens. I never did. I'm Claire, 32, architect, emotionally messy, chronically overwhelmed, and for reasons even I still don't fully understand, I ran. Back then, it felt like I was suffocating. Liam loved me like I was fragile glass, always careful, always soft. But I didn't want soft. I wanted space. Something in me, something wild and wounded, needed to disappear. I told myself I'd go for a week, sort my head, breathe, but the days stretched into months, then a year, and still I never wrote back. But Liam, he waited. People whispered about him. The man at the bus stop. A few even posted pictures on local forums. Romantic or crazy, one caption read. I hated seeing them. Hated myself more for being the reason behind them. Because I knew exactly why he stood there. We made that promise the night before I left. Right there on that exact spot. If anything ever happens, meet me here. Always here. I guess I never thought he'd take it that literally. But Liam was never the kind to give up on people. That was his flaw and his beauty. He believed in second chances even when no one deserved them. Especially me. The strange thing was, I didn't return to see him. Not at first. I came back to bury my mother. We hadn't spoken in years. Another broken relationship I ran from. She passed quietly, alone. The lawyer found me through a college record, said her last request was to have me take care of her house before it was sold. Walking back into that old, creaking home did something to me. The scent of dust and forgotten memories clawed at the walls I had built so high inside me. And in the stillness of that kitchen, where I once sat with her eating burnt toast and crying over scraped knees, something inside me cracked. That night, I dreamed of Liam. The next morning, without thinking, I walked toward the intersection. And there he was, just like my dream, just like every damn photo online. The guilt choked me. Why was he still waiting? Didn't he hate me? Didn't he finally realize I wasn't worth it? I told myself I'd just watch from across the street. One last time, just to be sure it was real. That he was real. But when he glanced toward the curb, just slightly, like he always used it when he felt me near, I knew it wasn't over. Not for him. Not for me. And now, I don't know what scares me more. Facing him and all that we left unsaid, or walking away again knowing he'll still be there tomorrow. Waiting. I didn't go back the next day. Or the next. But I thought about it. About him. About that intersection. About everything I had buried so neatly beneath ambition, fear, and a carefully rehearsed version of myself. Liam had always seen through all that. That was part of the problem. He saw me, messy, broken, brilliant me, and he stayed. That scared the hell out of me. Back when we met, I was at my lowest. 28. Just fired from my first real architecture job after an office meltdown I pretended was creative burnout. I was sleeping on a friend's couch, stringing together freelance gigs, and convinced the world had no space for someone like me. Liam had shown up then, an editor who hated his job but loved words and somehow loved me more. We collided at a coffee shop, fighting over the last power outlet. I had deadlines. He had patience. I snapped at him. He smiled, and instead of walking away, he bought me a muffin. Blueberry. No explanation. Just a muffin. Like he knew I hadn't eaten that day. That's how he was. Quietly thoughtful. Steady. Safe. Maybe too safe. There were nights I looked at him and felt this twist of guilt. Like I was robbing him of something. Like I was a storm pretending to be someone's anchor. That's when I started pulling away. Quietly. Subtly. Testing the distance between us. Seeing if he'd let go. He never did. Until I left. And now, standing inside my mother's house, sorting through boxes of someone else's regrets, I found myself thinking about the promises we never kept. Not just mine to him, but the ones my mother made to me. Promises to show up. To be better. She never said them out loud, but I could feel them in the way she used to brush my hair or leave notes in my lunchbox. People are haunted by the things they didn't say. I know that now. In the attic, I found a stack of old journals. My mother's. Yellowed pages, filled with the handwriting I hadn't seen since I was 16. She had written about me. My laughter, my outbursts, her confusion, her failures. It wasn't enough to erase the pain, but it was something. A kind of apology that came too late, but still mattered. That night, I walked again, back toward the intersection. He wasn't there. My stomach dropped in a way I didn't expect. Why did it hurt? I should have felt relief. Freedom. Closure, maybe. But all I felt was panic. What if he'd finally moved on? What if this time I was too late? The next morning, I went back. Earlier. And there he was. Sitting this time. A small thermos in his hand. His eyes scanning each passerby without really expecting anything. And suddenly, I wasn't angry at him for waiting. I was angry at myself for assuming he was just waiting for me. Maybe this place held more than just our memory. I approached slowly, still unsure what I was doing. He didn't look up until I was almost next to him. When he did, his face barely registered surprise. Just a slow, quiet realization, like a question he'd finally gotten the answer to. "Claire," he said softly. I didn't know what to say. He stood, brushing imaginary dust from his jacket, not moving closer, not stepping back. "You look well," he said. "I'm not," I replied before I could stop myself. And there it was, the truth. He nodded once, like he understood that too. "I kept coming," he said, eyes searching mine. "Not because I thought you'd come back, but because I needed a reason to stay grounded, to believe I could still trust my own heart." The silence between us buzzed. The city moved around us, but I felt like the only thing in focus was him. Me. And all that weight in the air we never got to put into words. I wanted to say so much. That I was sorry. That I never stopped loving him. That I read my mother's journals and realized I'd inherited the habit of running from people who try to love me. But I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I whispered, "Can we walk?" He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. He just started walking, and I followed. We walked in silence. Not the awkward kind, but the heavy, necessary kind. Every step I took beside Liam felt like wading deeper into something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The city around us hummed with life, but it all blurred into the background. I could hear the sound of his shoes hitting the pavement, the faint rustle of his jacket with each step, and my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. We stopped at the park bench near the old fountain, the one where we once sat sharing late-night takeout in the early days when everything still felt new and uncomplicated. Back then, we had plans, dreams. We'd even talked about moving abroad, starting over somewhere no one knew our names. Now, I didn't even know how to start a conversation with him. So, he said, sitting down, "Are you staying?" I hesitated. I hadn't decided. But the question wasn't about geography, and we both knew it. "Maybe," I said, "if I can fix what I broke." Liam looked away, lips pressed together. "Some things don't fix the same way." "You know." I did. God, I did. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and slipped it back into his jacket. "You can take it," I offered. It's fine, he said, but something shifted in his expression. Slight tension in his jaw. A flicker of discomfort in his eyes. He stood abruptly. I actually need to get to work. Work? I blinked. Where do you? Community center. I help run after-school programs now. Kids with unstable homes, mostly. Keeps me distracted. There was again. That hint of something more. Something I didn't know. You're different, I said, not sure if it was a compliment or confession. You're not, he replied. But I think you want to be. That counts for something. Then he walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the way he reacted to that text. It tugged at me. I told myself not to be jealous, not to read into things. He had every right to move on. But I also knew Liam. He was hiding something. I needed answers. Not just about him, but about myself. So, the next day, I visited the community center. Liam wasn't there, but someone else was. A woman named Serena greeted me with a warm but cautious smile. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, confident posture. She didn't introduce herself as anyone important, but the way the kids clung to her told me otherwise. You're Claire, right? She asked after a moment, as if testing how honest she should be. I nodded. I've heard a lot about you, she said, voice carefully neutral. I wasn't sure whether to feel relieved or terrified. From Liam? She didn't answer right away, just gestured toward a stack of paint-stained drawings on the wall. He doesn't say much, not about the past, but some silences say more than words. There was no accusation in her tone, no judgment, but something unspoken passed between us, an understanding, maybe even a warning. How close are you two? I finally asked. Serena smiled just a little. Close enough to know what he's been through. Not close enough to erase it. That hit harder than I expected. Back at my mother's house, I found a sealed envelope tucked inside one of her old jewelry boxes. My name on the front in soft cursive. Inside was a letter. She had written it a week before her death. It wasn't just an apology, it was a confession. She had known about my father's second family long before I did. She kept it from me, protected me, and in doing so, shaped the way I viewed trust, love, and abandonment. Everything I ran from, Liam included, stemmed from a fear I didn't know had been planted so early. I sat on the floor for hours, the letter shaking in my hands. Suddenly, the pieces made sense. I hadn't left Liam because he loved me too much. I left because I never believed anyone could love me without eventually walking away. But Liam hadn't walked. He had stayed. And now, I had to decide whether I had the courage to fight for something real or let it slip away again. I stood outside the community center for a long time, watching kids laugh through the chain-link fence while the wind picked up leaves along the sidewalk. Inside that building was the man I left behind and the life he'd built without me. But he wasn't picking up my calls now. 3 days had passed since I visited, since I met Serena, since everything I thought I knew about Liam started shifting under my feet. He hadn't blocked me. He just stopped answering. I couldn't blame him. If I were in his place, maybe I would have stopped waiting too. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Not just with us, but with him. The way he'd walked away after our last talk, something was off. There was pain there, yes, but something deeper. Like a part of him was shutting down again. Or hiding something. And then Serena called me. She didn't introduce herself this time. Her voice was lower, faster. Can you come now? It's Liam. My heart flipped. I didn't ask questions. I just ran. When I arrived, Serena was pacing outside, arms folded, expression tight. He didn't show up today. He always shows up, even when he's sick, even when he's hurting. She looked me in the eye, that calm exterior cracking for the first time. Claire, I think he's been pretending he's okay for a long time, and I think you're the only person who can get through to him. Panic clawed at my chest. He said he was fine. He's not, she cut in. Not since the last time you left. We called around. His co-workers hadn't seen him. His phone went straight to voicemail. It was getting dark, cold. and every street lamp that flickered on only made my fear grow louder. Serena and I drove toward the park, the last place I saw him truly smile, and then toward the intersection. That's where I found him, not standing this time, sitting on the pavement near the pole, knees drawn up, arms around them, his head lowered. Liam. I jumped from the car before Serena had fully stopped. He didn't look up. I dropped to my knees in front of him. Liam, what are you doing out here? Talk to me. His voice was hollow. It's the anniversary. The day you left. Last year. I counted. Oh God. I had forgotten. But he hadn't. He looked up at me then, and the pain in his eyes was unbearable. Raw. Exhausted. I thought if I came today, and you didn't show up, I'd finally stop hoping. Tears stung my eyes. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell me how much this was still hurting you? He gave a weak smile. Because I didn't want to guilt you into loving me again. I wanted you to come back because you wanted to. I grabbed his hands, cold and trembling. I didn't know how to come back, Liam. I didn't know if I even deserved to. That's the thing about promises, Claire, he whispered. They're not about being perfect. They're about showing up, even when it's hard. My chest tightened. I'm here now, I said, voice shaking. Not because I pity you. Not because I feel guilty. But because I finally stopped running from the truth. He looked at me, eyes glassy. Which is that I never stopped loving you. That the scariest part of all this was realizing I might have already ruined the one thing that ever truly felt like home. The silence between us crackled. Then he leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine, his breath warm and broken. Don't leave again. I won't, I whispered. But even as I said it, a flicker of uncertainty tightened in my chest, because staying meant facing not just him, but myself. And I wasn't sure how many more layers of truth we still had to uncover before we'd finally be free of the past. And as Serena stood by the car, watching us quietly, I couldn't help but wonder, what hadn't Liam told me yet? Liam hadn't let go of my hand since that moment on the sidewalk. We sat together in silence long after the streetlights came on, letting the sounds of the city wrap around us like a blanket of background noise. Everything felt fragile, like if we moved too quickly, it might all fall apart again. But we both knew this wasn't the end, and the universe wasn't done with us. The next morning, I found an envelope slipped under the door of my mother's house. No return address, no name, just Claire. Read this alone. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. You should know the truth about Liam before you waste any more time chasing a version of the past that never really existed. Ask him what happened the week after you left. Ask him about April 12th. Then decide if he's still the man you think he is. I read it 3 times before I could breathe. April 12th. A date I hadn't thought about. But now that it was in my head, I couldn't let it go. What had he done the week after I disappeared? By the time I reached the community center, Liam was outside with a group of kids, teaching them how to plant small herbs in garden boxes. He looked lighter than I'd seen him in weeks. Alive. I almost didn't want to ruin that. But I had to know. Can we talk? I asked, voice low. He saw the look in my eyes. He nodded. Inside, in the quiet of the office, I handed him the note. Watched his expression shift. Where did you get this? He asked, tone sharpening. It was left at my door. His jaw tensed. It doesn't matter. Liam, I said it doesn't matter, he snapped, louder than I'd ever heard him. He ran a hand through his hair, then looked away, ashamed. I'm sorry. I knew this would come back someday. I stared at him. What happened on April 12th? He sank into the chair, eyes distant. After you left, I broke. I wasn't eating, barely sleeping. Everyone kept telling me to move on, to accept you weren't coming back. But I couldn't. And then Serena found me, drunk, in my apartment. 3 days straight. I had let everything fall apart. She got me help, cleaned me up, brought me here. And for a while, I thought maybe if I rebuilt something, you'd come back to find it. I felt a cold pit in my stomach. What aren't you saying, Liam? He looked me dead in the eyes. I was with Serena. For a while. Not serious. But it happened. We both needed someone. And I thought you were never coming back. My chest felt like it collapsed inward. You were with her, I whispered. He nodded slowly. And you didn't think I deserved to know that before I walked back into your life. I didn't hide it to hurt you, Claire. I just didn't think it mattered anymore. You left. I was alone. Serena and I were broken people trying to feel whole. But it never meant what this does. I stood, numb, the air between us thick and choking. Did she write the letter? I don't know, he said, but the way he avoided my eyes told me everything I needed to know. She had. Of course she had. She watched me beg for your forgiveness. She saw us trying, and she still let me believe. I stopped, voice cracking. You should have told me. He moved toward me, hands out. Claire, no, I said, stepping back. This wasn't just about who you were with. It's about trust, about honesty. You waited every day like some tragic romantic, but you forgot to mention the part where you stopped waiting. I never stopped loving you. But love without truth is just another lie. He flinched, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in him that hadn't healed. The weight he carried, the guilt, the weakness, the moments he was human and flawed and real. I didn't know whether to stay or walk out again. All I knew was that everything had changed. Again, I left the community center with no clear direction, just my feet moving and my heart dragging behind. The air was heavy, the sky gray. Every step I took replayed Liam's words again and again. I never stopped loving you. But love wasn't enough now. Not after the lie. Not after Serena. Not after finding out that the person I had finally chosen to fight for had already made peace with losing me in someone else's arms. I ended up at the intersection, the place where everything began, the place where we promised each other forever like it was easy. The street was empty now. No Liam, no us, just ghosts of what we used to be. And that's when I saw Serena. She stood across the street, arms folded, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Waiting for me. She crossed toward me slowly, confident, calm, but her eyes carried something else, something I hadn't seen before. Sadness, maybe, or regret. You left him once, she said quietly. I picked up the pieces. I didn't respond. I couldn't. She stepped closer. I didn't write that letter to hurt you. I wrote it because I needed you to know he's not perfect, that he cracked without you, that he's real. I looked at her, stunned. So, this was about protecting me? No, she said. It was about protecting him, because he's still waiting for you to decide whether you'll love the man he is, not just the idea of him you kept chasing. I hated how much truth was in her voice. Serena turned to walk away, but just before she left, she said, he's not at the center today. He's back where you left him the first time. Maybe ask yourself why. I knew instantly where she meant. The house. My mother's house. I ran the whole way. When I reached the porch, Liam was sitting on the steps, elbows on his knees, staring at the street like it might offer answers. He stood when he saw me, but didn't come closer. Just waited. I caught my breath. Why here? He looked at the house, then back at me. Because this is where you are. And if I've learned anything, it's that I can't keep chasing someone who doesn't want to be found. I wanted to see if you'd come to me. I swallowed hard, heart aching. You hurt me, I said. I know. You lied. I know that too. So why should I still believe in us? He took a slow breath, the kind people take when they're terrified of the answer. Because you're not the only one who was scared, Claire. I lost you. And for a while, I didn't believe I deserved to be found. But when you came back, it felt like a second chance. And I ruined it again. I panicked. I made mistakes. But I never stopped wanting this. Wanting you. The wind picked up. Leaves rustled across the porch. I stepped closer. I need time. He nodded. I'm not asking for anything else. Just don't disappear again. I took his hand gently. This time if I leave, I'll leave the door open. His eyes met mine, raw, unsure, and full of hope. And then I leaned in, just enough for our foreheads to touch. The same way we used to, The same way we always did when we weren't ready for goodbye. We stood like that for a long time, not saying anything, not promising anything, just finally being honest in a way we hadn't been in years. And as we stood there, breathing the same air, surrounded by the echoes of everything we'd lost and everything we might still rebuild, I realized something. Sometimes, love isn't about dramatic declarations or perfect timing. Sometimes it's about choosing to stay when it's easier to walk away. We weren't healed. We weren't whole. But maybe, just maybe, we were enough.
2 weeks had passed since that night on the porch. Liam and I didn't jump into anything. There were no sweeping declarations or vows to never hurt each other again. We knew better. We had tried that before, fast and hopeful, only to crash hard when the past caught up. This time, we started small. Coffee. Quiet walks. Simple conversations that felt like bridges slowly rebuilding after a storm. I still stayed at my mother's house, sorting through her things, writing in the back room, trying to understand the pieces of her I'd never seen while she was alive. And Liam? He kept showing up. Not in the grand, dramatic ways like before, but in little ways. A message in the morning. A dinner left on the porch. A question that showed he was still listening. One evening, I sat across from him at the old fountain near the park, the same one where we had our first fight, our first kiss, and now, maybe, our first real beginning. I don't know if I'll ever stop being scared, I told him. Of being left. Of messing up. Of not being enough. He looked at me for a long moment. I don't expect you to stop being scared. I just want to be the person who stands beside you anyway. And that's what we became, not perfect, not fixed, but present. Real. Two people with wounds they stopped hiding. Serena eventually transferred to another center. She left a note for Liam that simply said, "Heal what you have. I'm rooting for you." There was no bitterness. Only quiet closure. As for my mother, I decided not to sell the house. I turned her old sewing room into a small design studio. Not for clients. For myself. For the ideas I used to bury because I thought they wouldn't matter. I'm learning now that they do. Liam comes by most afternoons. Sometimes he reads while I sketch. Other times, we sit in silence, just happy to be near each other. We're not chasing the past anymore. We're building something new, together slowly, honestly. And maybe that's the real lesson. Love doesn't always come with certainty or perfection. It comes with patience, forgiveness, and the decision to stay, especially when staying is hard. For the first time in a long time, I'm not running. And he's no longer waiting. We're walking forward, together.